All right, so this is the first time in a long time that we have had the Victor Nieves show in studio. Check this out. We'll get into the show in just a second. I just wanted to give a teaser. It's kind of cool. Kind of cool, right? I mean, a little tour here. We got the Donald Trump post-assassination attempt. We got the Constitution. We got all kinds of amazing... Anyways, in the event that you notice a strange clip, if you notice that I look stupid while I'm on camera, this is a foreign thing to me. We haven't done this in a long time. So if I'm not looking right at the camera, my apologies. If, the formatting, you're going to notice the formatting is cut up every 10, 15 minutes. We have a break where you'll see a cut in the action. That's because this is also not only a podcast, but it's also formatted for radio as well. It goes out to radio stations. And so, anyways, with all of that said, enjoy, jump into the skip past this, whatever you want to do. God bless you. I appreciate you watching the video. Appreciate you being a part of the community. Now get into the show. Welcome back, my friend. My name is Victor. Of course, you're listening to the Victor Nieves Show. Today we have, of course, a lot to talk about. My apologies for not having an episode out last week. You may still be able to hear just a little bit of it in my voice, but I was sick. That doesn't happen very often, and I thought about just forcing my way through it, but trust me, it was for my own good and also for the good of the show that we didn't do one last week. But that just means we have so much to talk about this week. The main theme of today's show is going to be what I'm calling Americans in Name Only. Probably not that hard to figure out that the last couple of weeks have been insane. We're seeing immigration protests, and they're blocking the streets, and they're waving foreign flags on American soil, and something just does not set right with me. It makes my blood boil, quite frankly, to see people who are flying foreign flags on American soil. And I'm actually not going to be talking so much about the illegal aliens today as I am the people who may have their paperwork and may be in this country legally. These might be legal, naturalized American citizens who are flying foreign flags on American soil. So I won't get the cart ahead of the horse here and jump into it too quick. But that will be the main theme of today's show. So definitely stick around for that. We're also going to be talking about a lot of other stuff. There are some updates, and I would be remiss if I didn't cover some of the updates. I also want to let you know, to those of you who are podcast listeners, radio listeners, that this is the first time in a long time where the studio is back. We actually have a audio-visual studio, so this will be, Lord willing, on YouTube, and hopefully we will have most of these on YouTube. I've made this promise so many times. I understand if you don't believe it. I can't. What am I gonna say? I mean, I've kind of devalued this promise over the years, but maybe, just maybe so. Hopefully these will now be over on YouTube. So if you don't subscribe on YouTube and you want to see the video, then be sure, feel free to do so. So before we jump into it, as always, I want to start off the best way that I know how. That's by giving glory and honor to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, because, folks, I have been so tremendously blessed in my life in ways that I cannot explain, in ways that I certainly do not even remotely deserve, but I am so tremendously grateful for those blessings. God has been so tremendously good to me. And so if you ever listen to me on one singular issue, by far the most important thing that I could ever communicate to you is the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I'm not perfect at sharing it with people, but I will do my best. The one who made this universe, he knows you and he loves you. He knows every bad thing that you've ever done in your entire life, yet he chooses, at great cost of his own, by the way, to have a relationship with you. He wants to be there with you, and that's the firm foundation for you to build your life on, not Donald Trump, not politics or any of this other insanity. So let's jump right into it. Okay. We've got all of the formalities out. Obviously, the gospel's not a formality. Nobody beat me up for that. Anyways, you know what I'm talking about. Let's jump into it. Because this, and again, we're going to do kind of what we've done the last couple of shows, where I'm going to give this topic whatever. We could talk about it for the entire show. If I get whipped into a frenzy about this, then we might end up talking about it for the entirety of today's show. And maybe we won't get to any of the other stuff. Maybe we won't get to RFK Jr. And, there's so much to talk about. But Americans in name only. That's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing people. And again, I want to highlight the folks who are here legally. We've seen the protests, and the initial knee-jerk reaction of myself and of many others was we see it and we say, Well, boy, they just made ICE's job like really easy. Somebody get on the phone, we'll call up the ICE hotline and we'll get these people deported. And now many of them, I'm sure, are probably lacking the proper paperwork. These are probably foreign illegal aliens, but let's not be too optimistic. I would bet a whole lot of them are naturalized American citizens who are showing you where their loyalty lies. And listen, I understand. I put this out on X and I'll say it again. I fully understand why this cannot happen. And I will also acknowledge that it's probably a good thing that I am not a king. But if you were to make me king of these United States for 48 hours, and during my time as king, if I could do whatever I want, right? The Constitution didn't apply to me. It's kind of a scary thought, but to be completely honest, if I saw American citizens protesting in the streets, waving Mexican flags in defense of criminal, illegal alien Mexicans, I'd deport them too. I would go round up the entire thing. I don't care, legal, not legal, deport them all, because these people clearly have no interest in defending our country. And again, I have to say redundantly, I understand why this is never going to happen. And I will again say it's probably for the better that Victor is never going to be the complete and total king, right? We have a system, and that's for the better. We're all flawed humans, and our founding fathers were highly intelligent people, and they put in safeguards to protect us from things like that. But anyways, when I see that, when I see people who have no loyalty to this country, they're showing you something very important. And it actually kind of is a good segue. We'll get into this later. It's a good segue into the conversation about not just illegal immigration. We've talked about this before on the show, but legal immigration. Mass legal immigration is a terrible problem in and of itself. In fact, let's give a quick spark notes of it. The best way that I know personally to highlight the issue with legal immigration is take, for example, a really bad guy. Whomever it is, we'll just paint this picture. There's a guy out there. He's very bad. He's a murderer. He's a rapist. He's a drug dealer. I don't know. This guy's done some really, really bad stuff. And he wants to come to the United States so he can enjoy our milk and honey. He wants to live off of the welfare system. He wants to get, snack benefit, whatever the heck. What do they call that? Snack benefit? I don't know. Anyways, he wants to live off of welfare. Well, if he broke into our country, obviously that's a really bad thing. You'd be hard-pressed to find really anybody who would say that, we shouldn't deport that guy. We don't want that guy here. But now, say I take the exact same fella and I give him his paperwork. Because the Democrats, I saw a young man on Instagram, he was suggesting this very thing. They say, well, yeah, okay, they're illegal and, the law says we have to deport them. What if instead we just gave them their paperwork? What if instead we just made these people legal? And this has been kind of the Democrat response, is we have to provide a pathway to citizenship, right? The real issue isn't so much that they're coming here illegally. The real issue is that we can't process enough of them fast enough so that we can make them all come here legally, right? It seems to be that we're operating from this preconceived point of view that we need more people in this country. And we do. I mean, our fertility rates are bad, but we don't need to subsidize our own population with foreign populations. We need to stop murdering our own babies. That's a whole other conversation that maybe we'll get into later. But the answer is not to just bring in more people. And if you don't understand that there can be an issue with legal immigration, you might find yourself very hard-pressed to explain why it's a bad idea to just open up the floodgates and increase the legalization, right? Some of these people, again, I'll say, they want to bring in as many human beings as possible, and it's not like we just have some weird, arbitrary, this is what the law says, so this is what we have to do. Obviously, the law is really important, but what's the purpose of that law? Why is it that we're not just giving blanket citizenship to anybody who comes knocking on our door? Well, the reason is we don't want all of these foreign people. And a good example as to why that would be, legal or illegal. Listen, when people come to our country, that's not a right, it's a privilege. When we, as the United States, the greatest place we've ever seen in human history, the greatest, most successful nation ever, when we have people come to our door, of course, our heart goes out to them. We can wish them the best. But they have no right to be here. If we allow them to come into our country, we've done them a great service, obviously. And hey, sometimes it's a great thing. We've brought in some really important people, some really successful people, and they've done great stuff for our country. That's who we should let in. We did a program on this forever ago. It's been like 2.5, 3 years ago, where I talked about the founding fathers and their view of immigration, legal, illegal, just their view of immigration. Should people be able to come to the United States? And the key takeaway from almost all of the founding fathers was that they wanted people to be able to come to our country. However, they didn't want anyone coming to our country who was not going to assimilate. And, arguably more importantly, they didn't want anyone coming into our country who wasn't going to actually benefit our country. And so when you're bringing in these foreign-born populations and then you're finding out that they actually have their highest loyalty and allegiance to their own people, and this is what you saw with Selena Gomez. She was performatively crying, and she was, oh, my people are under attack. My people are under attack. Selena, what the heck are you talking about? Your people. You're an American citizen. Your people are the people of the United States of America. Of course, she's talking about Mexican people. She's saying her people being the Mexican people, which, where are your loyalties? Are your loyalties to people who happen to look like you that are also criminals? I mean, are you really going to put a criminal on a higher pedestal than the law of the land in the country that has given you all of the opportunity that you've ever seen? I would really hope not. I would really hope that those aren't the people that we are allowing into our country. But unfortunately, it seems that that's exactly who we're allowing into our country. And again, it highlights the issue with immigration absent assimilation. There has to be assimilation. When we have these people who are coming into our country and they're not assimilating to our culture, they're not assimilating to our values, they're not assimilating to our way of life, and they're not even viewing our people being American citizens, they're not viewing our people as, quote, their people, we have a really huge rift in our country. We have a really huge problem. And this whole multiculturalism, it's not going to work if everybody divides into their in-group, out-group of their own racial identity. Oh, well, these guys look kind of like me, and those guys kind of look like you. And so we're all going to splinter out, and we're all going to split up. By the way, here's just one for the road. I'll just throw this out there. Take it for what you will. Is it interesting to anyone else that Selena Gomez can go and she can say her people are under attack, and she's just talking about Mexican illegal aliens? Or LeBron James, he could go and talk about how his people have been, he's got a couple of quotes like that. His people have been unjustly treated for hundreds of years. And it's very common that we'll hear these kinds of statements made from certain groups of people. You never really hear much made about the racial aspect, right? When it came to Selena Gomez, people were upset because she looked stupid. I mean, she was defending criminal illegal aliens, but nobody really addressed that statement, my people. You see, if a white person was to go out, if I was, for example, to go on the airwaves and go on the internet and I was to say, my people are under attack, my people are not being treated fairly, my people need to have more representation in government, my people need a say in these issues. If a white person was to start positively identifying alongside their racial demographic and saying, my people are under attack, and then defending the criminals within and saying, well, my people, being all white people who happen to have committed some sort of a crime, my people are under attack because the law is being enforced against them, there would be a huge uproar about that, because it's only allowed, this whole retreating into your racial identity, that's only allowed for minority groups. It's not allowed for Europeans. It's not allowed for white folks. And listen, I'm not making a case to say that that's for the better or for the worse. Personally, I think people ought not do that. I think in a perfect world, we would hopefully all agree that folks wouldn't do this whole us versus them, in-group, out-group kind of behavior. But of course, we are seeing this. And so it's an interesting observation, just a small piece in a bigger picture that I found to be a little bit interesting with the Selena Gomez situation. But anyway, to me, if you like Mexico that much, my question to you is very simple. What the heck are you doing in my country? Why are you here? If you're going to be upset that the United States is enforcing immigration laws And you're going to go and feel so compelled that you have to walk out into the street and fly a foreign flag on American soil. You are so disrespectful to the country. I mean, imagining that we're talking, for example, about somebody who's a first-generation immigrant. They were naturalized into our country. We allowed them, like I said in the first, we extended an arm to them, an olive branch to them. We let them into the greatest nation in the history of the world. And then they turn around and they spit in our face and they say, no, as a matter of fact, I have no loyalty to this country. I have no loyalty to the people who have given me the greatest opportunity in the greatest nation, the most freedoms, the most everything that you could ever possibly imagine. I'm going to spit in the face of all of that. Ungrateful, pathetic behavior from people who are Americans in name only. And to those people, it is my genuine wish that you leave this country. If that is you, if I'm talking about you right now, leave this country. I don't want you here. I don't care what you are. I don't care if you're from Czechoslovakia. I don't care if you're from Mexico, Honduras, Guatemala, anywhere in the entire world. If you are going to do this racist crap where you're going to create this in-group, out-group identity, and then you're going to spit in the face of the country that gave you all of the opportunity in the world, leave. If you like Mexico so much, get up and freaking leave. And I'm not just talking about people who are here illegally. If you're going to come to this country, you have a certain duty to assimilate. You have a certain duty to have just the slightest bit of, bare bones allegiance to this nation. Because you see, the rest of us, we do have an allegiance to this nation, hopefully. And I'm not saying everybody who is born in the United States is super allied to the United States, but I will say the Founding Fathers understood that there was going to be some level of this unique intersection between identities, right? Where you're going to have people who come from a different place. They're always going to have a certain level of loyalty to that place that they came from. That's why you'll notice in our Constitution, in order to be the President of the United States, it's unique in this capacity. In order to be the President of the United States, you have to have been born in the United States. You can't have come from anywhere else in the entire world, because the Founding Fathers very keenly understood just basic human interactions. They understood human dynamics and human nature, and they knew that if you had come from somewhere else, you will always have some level of foreign loyalties. You'll have split loyalties, right? If you come from, let's even say, an ally country like Britain, if you come from Britain and you're the President of the United States and you're in a situation where you have to help the British people, or you have to help the United States. The Founding Fathers didn't want the President of the United States to be somebody who would have to wonder, someone who would have to stop and think or have even the slightest bit of reservation because they have some foreign allegiance. If you have the level of foreign allegiance that would compel you, again, I say, to go out into the street and fly a foreign flag, then leave. If you like Mexico so much, if you like Honduras so much, if you like Guatemala so much, any other place in the entire world, if you like it so much, get up and leave. Because what I've noticed at most of these anti-immigration enforcement protests, these anti-ICE protests, whatever they want to call them, they are never flying American flags. They're not flying American flags and saying, oh, no, I want a pathway to citizenship. Even if they were, I would disagree. But they're not doing that. They're doing something far more egregious, which is, again, flying a foreign flag in defense of foreign criminals solely because those criminals happen to look like them. They happen to have come from a similar place as them. This is why I've hammered for years now the importance of assimilation. And if you're not familiar, if you haven't heard the prior programs about this, maybe you've heard the term assimilation, but you're not super familiar with it. Assimilation can be seen as you adopting yourself into the cultural norms, the values, etc. of that place, right? A really small scale example of this is I moved to the state of Texas. Texas has its own culture. Texas has its own history. It has its own way of life, its own norms. Texans are very strange people. Listen, I acknowledge this, but I love the state of Texas, and it's a privilege to me in many ways to be able to come to the state of Texas. It's a great place. I'm not going to come here and try and change Texas because it has its own place. I'm going to come here, and for the most part, again, this is a small-scale example, I'm going to assimilate to Texas. I'm not going to come and tell them, hey, no, I don't think that you should have your longhorn cattle. You should have shorthorn cattle. Because this is a place that, and again, this is a very unserious example, being that I'm moving from one state to another, but you can feel that culture. Imagine how much more significant it would be to go to a different country, the greatest land of opportunity in the history of the world, and then you spit in its face. we should not accept that behavior. We as Americans, we should not accept that behavior. And so, of course, I understand that we cannot deport naturalized U.S. citizens. But listen, if it was up to me, I would at the very least strongly encourage, if that's you, if you're the kind of person that's out here protesting immigration and you're running around saying, la migra, get out. Pack your bags, go home. Shoo, go home. I don't want you to be here. Or for real, start assimilating. Start assimilating to our values, to our culture, to our norms, and start putting the American values and the American people first. All right, so now we've covered, I think I've gotten that out of my system. We've covered the situation with assimilation, the lack thereof, mass immigration, the problems that we're seeing with this stupid immigration protest. I have to say it one more time. If you are flying a foreign flag on American soil in protest of the enforcement of America's laws and our national sovereignty, it is my sincere request that you leave this country. Anyways, now that I've said that a bunch of times, I think that my beliefs are rather clear at this point. I do want to move along a little bit here. I want to talk about how we have had so many wins so far in the Trump administration. Some things I'm not super incredibly, amazingly happy with, like the comments about the United States taking over Gaza. I have no interest in that. Let it be known. I do not want the United States to have any involvement in Gaza. No, thank you. So to anybody who thinks I'm a blind Donald Trump sycophant who will defend anything the man ever does, I totally do not agree with any idea of us taking over Gaza. I'm hoping, this is a bit of copium maybe, but I'm hoping that this is some sort of a negotiation tactic, and he has no intentions of doing that. But I digress either way. The victories. We're not talking about the bad things. I put that out there. We're moving on past it. The victories so far in the Trump administration, there are too many to count. It's like every day there's a new laundry list of things that Trump has managed to accomplish. We, of course, got the Lake and Riley Act signed into law, Donald Trump's first major piece of legislation that he has actually signed, the thing sent to him from Congress that he has actually signed. Wonderful. We absolutely love to see it. But I want to talk a little bit more about the cultural victory and the shifts that we have seen. And I want to say something that's actually hard for me to wrap my head around, and I've always hoped for this day. I've sincerely prayed for this day. And with everything else in politics, it's been easy for me to envision our wins. It's been easy for me to see how we can do it, right? If anybody has listened to me for very long, you know me well enough to know I'm an eternal optimist. I will see the light at the end of the tunnel. If there is a speck of light, I will be telling you. And if there is no light, I will be making it. Okay, I am an eternal optimist. But there's one thing that I've come to realize. I didn't even know this. I didn't even consciously process that there was something going on in the back of my head as it pertains to the cultural rot and the slippery slope of degeneracy. It was always, without me realizing it, it was very difficult for me to actually think that we were going to move back up the slippery slope, to think that we were going to begin to undo some of the bad stuff. And I've talked about this, the rejection of it. And I've talked about the movement that we've seen culturally. I've talked about, I've often referred to it as the whiplash theory, about how young men particularly are moving away from the insanity that we've seen forced upon our generation, but to actually see it enacted, to see Donald Trump signing executive orders saying that there are only two genders, male and female, to see him telling federal workers to take their pronouns out of their bios, to see, executive orders signed saying that women actually get to have their own protected spaces, and that men who are suffering some sort of severe mental illness don't get to just barge into a ladies' locker room and take out their unit and just get naked. I mean, to see these things, it's funny, even an example that has had mixed reactions from some of the people on the right, the very traditional conservatives on the right. Donald Trump dropped the TQ. I don't know if many people know this. It kind of went under the radar, but on government websites, there's certain places where it'll say the LGBTQAI plus, whatever other pieces of the alphabet Joe Biden had added. Well, no more. Does it say LGBTQA, whatever the heck, the acronym is a mouthful. Anyways, no longer does it say any of that stuff. It just says LGB, which, listen, I would rather it not say LGB at all, okay? I would rather get rid of all of it. But for some weird reason, that was kind of the one that stuck out the most to me. we dropped the TQ. I mean, we just straight up got rid of it on government websites. We got rid of the trans and the queer. We just chopped that sucker off. Pun intended, I suppose. We chopped off the T just like they chop off the D. And so, anyways, man, bad puns today. But jokes aside, we are actually witnessing a clawing back up the slippery slope. We have seen the slippery slope. We have blundered and fallen down it. And somehow, some way, by the grace of God Almighty and the executive actions and orders of Donald Trump, we are actually watching a real rejection of the crazy. I've called it many, many times the collective insanity. And that collective insanity, it can be beaten. And it is being beaten. We are witnessing in real time the whole transgender mob stuff. I mean, they're cutting off funding to schools. They're cutting off. This is amazing. I mean, this is absolutely amazing. Not that they're cutting off funding. I got to be more specific or somebody will take that clip out of context. They're cutting off funding to schools that are telling these children that you might be stuck in the wrong body. They're cutting off funding, or at the very least threatening to cut off funding whenever you have teachers that are hiding a child's mental illness from the parents and refusing to, acknowledge that there's a kid here trying to say that there's something that they're not, and all sorts of things. And so I love to see that. Personally, I love to see that we are actually clawing our way back up the slippery slope. And I'm curious. For those of you who are listening, you always can feel free to reach out to me. You can reach out by email at thevictornievisshow@gmail.com. You can also reach out on all of my social medias. I will hopefully get back to you as soon as I possibly can on there. What's your favorite thing that Donald Trump has done thus far? We've had the opportunity now to kind of have the dust settle just a little bit, to get our sea legs under us, adjust from the Kamala Harris, Joe Biden freaking debacle that all of that was. Now that we are kind of just in the infant stages of the second term of the Trump administration, I'll tell you, I am extraordinarily happy. I am, like I said, there's a few things maybe that I wouldn't have said or done. Be that as it may. We are winning in ways that I couldn't even... It's like, when he was number 45, his first term in office, he did fantastic. He was a great president. If his entire second term is going to follow the path that he is currently on, forget adding him to Mount Rushmore. We need to make a whole mountain just to him, just Mountain Trump, and it's just going to be his face or something. I mean, the man did not come to play games. He came to take scalps. And when he said early on, when he announced his run for office again, his, I guess, third run for the presidency, he told the American people, I am going to be your retribution. Now, that wasn't a theme that was really echoed throughout the campaign. In fact, it was left, I think maybe it was a one-time statement that was never really said again. And, he very much ran on unity. He wants to unify the country toward what is good. He wants to unify the country for the best interest of the American people. That said, he is out for keeps. This is not playing a little skirmish. This isn't a sparring session. Donald Trump is out to destroy the people who sought to destroy him, and not just him. They wanted to destroy you. He was obviously in the way. And so when we're looking at what's happening with our so-called intelligence agencies, when you look at what's happening with the Department of Government Efficiency, with Elon Musk, and we'll get into that here in a minute. When you look at what's happening and the actions that he's taking, this is not a man who's here to play nice. This is a man who is here to burn that system down. He is here to root it out, to drain the swamp. I understand reasonably there were people that weren't super happy the first term, right? He didn't fully drain the swamp. You got to listen. This is something people got to understand. The man had to run for re-election. He no longer has to run for re-election. He can burn the boats. He can burn it all down. He can tear the system down, and they know that. They're running like a bunch of scared little pathetic rats, a bunch of degenerate little demonic rats. These people, they're running and they're fleeing because they've been taking advantage of you. They've been taking the American payer's tax dollar, and they've been enriching themselves. They've been enriching their friends. They've been wasting it. They've been corrupt. They've been spying on you. They've been doing so many evil, evil things that it's like more comes out every day, and you just look at it and you think, I can't imagine that that's when the receipts are in front of you. It's like, holy cow. I mean, I always knew it was bad, but now I'm looking at it for real. This is actually what they've been doing to us. Folks, they tried to kill him. They tried really hard to kill him. They tried to put him in prison. They tried to bankrupt him. They tried to impeach him 2 times. When I tell you the man is not here to play games anymore, I don't have to tell you that. You already know. You've seen it. You saw it in his presidential portrait. This is not a man who's here to play games. This is a man who is here to burn the system down, and thank God for it. And after him, we'll have someone like J.D. Vance to clean up the pieces and move us forward in a great, beautiful new path, and it's going to be fantastic. But Trump is, he's here for business. You know who else is here for business? Elon Musk. I said I would talk about him in a second. There's been a lot of liberal outrage this week where they're saying nobody voted for Elon Musk, which, put a pin in that, sweetheart. It's a little bit ironic to hear this coming from them, as if they care about democracy. You really care, Democrats? You suddenly care about who you voted for? Okay, Joe Biden would like a word with you. Y'all voted for him to be your nominee for president, and then he was kicked out by party leadership. So if you really care about like democracy and who someone had voted for, no one voted for Kamala Harris to be the Democrat nominee in 2024. So not sure I totally believe y'all, but listen, when they say nobody voted for Elon, I know that they're not smart. I know that these people, I don't hold them in particularly high regard, but even they don't. I mean, even they aren't that dumb. Like, they're not that stupid, right? There's no way that they're that. It just seems like you're asking a bit too much for me to accept that they're actually that dumb. Donald Trump and Elon Musk campaigned together. August 20th, 2024, Donald Trump started floating the idea of making him one of his cabinet members, of adding Elon Musk to the cabinet, talking about the Department of Government Efficiency. Elon Musk made very public his intention that he was absolutely willing to serve the country if he was allowed to, if Donald Trump was to win. And they toured the country telling the American people that they were going to do this together. The American people heard it loud and clear. Donald Trump was on the ticket, but it wasn't just Donald Trump on the ticket. I mean, in a very hyper-literal sense, yeah, sure, nobody cast a ballot where they checked Elon Musk's name. He wasn't on the ballot. But he was on the ballot in the sense that Donald Trump and his entire team was on there. Trump put together a coalition that's it is a extraordinary rarity to ever see this in politics, and we will probably never see this in presidential politics again as long as we live, where he put together a team, including former Democrats, including moderates, including hardcore conservatives, hardcore Republicans, not just Elon Musk. You're looking at Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, Elon Musk, RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard. You're talking about a whole entire team. And so when the American people went and they voted for Donald Trump, they did vote for Elon Musk. They did vote for the Department of Government Efficiency. They did vote for all of these things. That's exactly what we wanted. That's what I wanted, unless there's been some sort of tremendous disconnect. Surely I'm not the only one who paid attention to what Donald Trump was campaigning on. See, if you were to ask me, I have enough faith in the American people who went to the ballot box and cast an educated vote that I would think probably they noticed that for 4 months leading up to the election, Elon Musk was ubiquitous. He was everywhere that Donald Trump was. Those two were like two peas in a pod. They were campaigning together. They were all over the place. I have a feeling that the American people knew that, folks. And I've seen like Harry Sisson, and I've seen a bunch of these other Democrats and, paid shills and hacks and whatever else, pejorative we want to come up with for these people. I've seen them out and about complaining as if, oh, we didn't want these guys. No, this is correction, exactly what we wanted. So we are now in the fourth and the final segment of today's show. It's absolutely flown by. If you've enjoyed it thus far, be sure that you follow me on social media. Follow me on YouTube. Subscribe if you have not already so that you can see the video version of this show. Anyways, I would be terribly remiss if, by the end of today's program, I did not discuss Donald Trump blowing the rest of the world out of the water. I mean, this has been something like the equivalent of a grown man entering a children's boxing tournament, right? You have Donald Trump, and he shows up to the international stage, and there's a bunch of 9-year-olds in headgear with big 16-ounce gloves, and he just comes in and starts beating the brakes off of all of them. Justin Trudeau pops up, boom, you got it, left hook right to the chin. You got, I don't know, whoever that lady is. What's her name? The Mexican president. She comes up, Claudia Scheidenberg or something. Wham! Gets her with an uppercut. Like, this has been brutality. This has been, and it's been obviously fantastic for the American people. This is what Donald Trump is known for. He is the businessman. He is the art of the deal. There's a reason that folks trusted him. Intuitively, you could feel it in your guts. You knew that the guy is, listen, like I said last segment, he's not here to play around. This is not a man to be trifled with. He is coming to domestically take scalps and drain the swamp. But internationally, he's coming to get what's ours. The American people, you and I, we have been taken advantage of. We have been footing the check for everyone else in the world. We've been defending the rest of the world. We've been buying their products with insane trade deficits. Go and look this up right now. Whenever you hear this, when you get the chance to safely do so, I suppose if you're driving, maybe don't do it. Look at the trade deficit between the United States and Mexico. Look at the trade deficit between the United States and Canada. Anytime you hear this crap about how, oh, these are our best allies and these are our neighbors. Oh, really? Why aren't they buying any of our stuff? Why are they operating in a ridiculous trade deficit? I mean, to the tune of like $60 billion, $150 billion. These countries are taking advantage of us. And they don't buy our good, right? You look at the Germans, you look at the Europeans, they're not buying our cars. We're buying their cars. We're not, and you know all of this stuff. I'm preaching to the choir. Donald Trump is coming, and he's saying, no, enough of that. We're not going to be your piggy bank. We're not going to be your bodyguard. We're not going to be any of that. We can be your equal. If you want to behave like adults and we can behave like adults, then we can have a great professional relationship. We can be equals, but we are not going to be your mom. We're not going to be your dad, and we're not going to be your bodyguard, okay? You're going to have to live on your own. If the United States tax dollars are propping you up, if your country cannot exist without us essentially subsidizing you with your military, your economy, and etc., tough luck, dude. Sorry to be you. And so whenever it comes to, Canada and Mexico, Donald Trump says, all right, I'm going to hit y'all with some tariffs. I think the number was, 25%. I'm going to hit y'all with some tariffs. Because you have not done what we've asked you to do. Very simple request. Canada, stop allowing these people to come into our country from the north. Mexico, stop allowing these people to come into our country from the south. He imposes the tariff. He says, listen, here are my conditions. You're going to have to do what we're asking you to do. It's not a hard ask. Stop screwing us over. Stop trying to take advantage of the United States. Stop offloading your prisoners into our country. If you do that, we will have no tariffs. And so it takes just literally a few hours. And by the way, before this, of course, he had the situation with Colombia where he's sending back the illegal aliens, and Colombia says, we're not going to take those illegal aliens. And Donald Trump says, we'll see about that. Colombia smacks him across the face. We already talked about he uppercutted, he uppercutted Mexico and left hooked Canada. I don't know what he did to Colombia. He picked him up and broke their back on his knee. He snapped him in half and threw him in a dumpster. Colombia, of all places, Colombia tries to stand up to the United States. They tried to act all tough. They're like, oh yeah, Mr. President, we're going to hit you with our own tariffs and we're going to mess up the American economy. 4 minutes later, they cave. The Colombian president sending his own personal jet to go pick up the illegal aliens. But in any case, so Donald Trump imposes the tariffs, and the left has about 24 hours of, for real, advocating for foreign countries, which is insane. They were literally advocating, you could tell they were happy. They were gleeful, hoping that the United States and our economy was going to be devastated by these tariffs. Oh, everything you buy from Canada is going to cost 25% more, and everything that you buy from Mexico is going to cost more, and your Colombian beans, your coffee beans, it's going to cost so much more, and this is the end of the world, and Donald Trump is really ruining my day. That it was like they were happy that they wanted you to be suffering, because that would mean Orange Man bad. And if you have to suffer so that people don't like the Orange Man, that's a price that, frankly, they're willing to pay. And so anyways, for about 24 hours, they had their little song and dance. They put on their little theater kid show and their performative arts, and they said, "Oh, it's going to be the end of the way." Yeah, well, and then and then the aforementioned uppercut, left hook, and drop kick happened, and Canada, they click their heels and they say, "Okay, we're going to spend like $1.2 billion or something. We're going to, do this big, huge initiative to make sure that people aren't coming across the northern border." Mexico, they click their heels like a good boy and they get in line and they say, "Okay, we're going to send," I think they sent 10,000 troops or something like that. Huge number of military members. They're going to crack down on the cartels. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. They're going to invest all of this money. They get in line. These countries, they get in line. Folks, we are witnessing in real time. We are witnessing the art of the deal. And there's no one else, frankly, in my opinion, who could do this the way that Donald Trump does this. There's just not. I just don't see it. I would hope that I'm wrong. I hope there's other people that could pull this off. But where have they been? I mean, the Republican Party, the last 3 weeks has shown that the Republican Party of the last 40 years has been pathetic. Like, what are these? Are they stupid? Are former leaders, what have they been doing this entire time? The people who have claimed to be on our side, we just saw what can be done in 3 weeks. Where the heck were you people? What were you doing? You guys were just sitting on your hands, singing Kumbaya, laying in the dirt? Like, what is this? What have you... Anyways, Donald Trump has shown what can be done using the might of the United States, using the might, literally, these are all just economic options. I mean, he's not even using our military. He's a great diplomat in that way, I suppose. He's just using the tools that we have. And as the greatest consuming nation, I talked about this in my tariff. The vindication is insane. I talked about this in a very detailed, episode of the show that we did, talking specifically about tariffs and Donald Trump's plan for tariffs and why they were going to be so successful. I said this exact thing would happen. I mean, I laid out the exact argument as to why tariffs would be so successful. The United States is the greatest consumer. We immediately tanked the value of the Canadian dollar. We immediately tanked the value of the Mexican dollar in relation to the USD, which is the international medium of exchange. And so I already laid all of this out. Of course, it was going to happen this way. But now you're seeing something very interesting on behalf of the Democrats, who are literally being beaten so thoroughly they have basically nothing that they can cling to. It's like a drowning man trying to grab small pieces of wood in the ocean, thinking that maybe this one will, make him buoyant or something. The Democrats are now trying to say, "Oh yeah, MAGA? Well, you guys said that tariffs were good and that tariffs were good general economic policy. But actually now you're trying to say that tariffs are really just a tool of diplomacy to get other countries to do what we want them to do." And it's like, well, listen, this isn't an either or. Tariffs can be multifaceted. As I said again in that prior episode, and I've said many times, tariffs are one of the most complicated parts of the entire international market. They can be used in so many ways. They can be used, yes, as a protectionist measure to ensure American jobs, to boost production in our own country, to punish other countries. They can be used as a tool of negotiation. There are so many ways that tariffs can be involved in the gigantic spider web of international relations economically. So this is something where maybe they're not smart enough to comprehend it. I don't know, but they're trying to boil it down into this false dichotomy. Like it can only be either or. Tariffs can only be a tool of economic diplomacy to get what we want with border security, or they can be a good, financial, good economic policy in certain circumstances, but they cannot be both. No, they can be both things at the same time. They can just be used. It's a tool. Tools can be used in an abundance of different ways. And so, it's also funny for me because they're so wrong. They're just wrong all the time now. But it's funny for me to see these people who do not believe in supply side economics. They do not believe in the most basic principles of a free capitalistic market. And they'll tell you, as an example, they'll tell you that increasing the corporate tax rate is not going to negatively impact consumer baskets, right? It's not going to impact your ability to buy things. It's not going to drive up the prices of the things that you purchase. Of course, that's stupid. I mean, if you increase the price on production, well, then the product is going to reflect that. And they'll also say increasing, for example, minimum wage exorbitantly is not going to negatively impact the prices of things. It's not going to drive them up, I should say. Of course, that, spits in the face of reason. If you have to pay all of your employees 20% more, how are you going to... Your margins have changed considerably. How are you going to pay for that? Of course, you have to either fire some employees to make up for it, or if you have to raise the price of the goods. Anyways, they don't believe in supply-side economics. But in their mind, tariffs are the only thing where supply side economic principles are going to be, put into effect. Make that one make sense. Anyways, we don't have time for that. That's all I got for you today. Till next time, keep me in your prayers, keep your country in your prayers. God bless.